Incoming message.
So imagine for a second that the unexplained shadows you catch on security cameras aren't just, random residual energy stuck on an infinite loop. What if they're actually learning? Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're breaking down a deeply, frankly, unsettling investigation into CCTV footage from haunted locations. The data we're looking at points to a genuinely horrifying premise. These paranormal entities aren't just randomly popping up in our homes and buildings. They're actively adapting to our surveillance. They're responding to being watched. I mean, think about the baby monitor sitting on your nightstand right now, or that doorbell camera watching your porch. We rely on those devices to feel safe, right? We just assume they passively record. But what if the things they capture are studying the cameras right back? Okay, let's dive right into this, because this quote right here perfectly captures the absolute chilling psychological impact of the source material we're unpacking today. The room knows you're watching. Just let that sink in for a second, right? We usually think of a camera as a one-way mirror. We observe the environment totally insulated, safely removed from whatever is on the other side of the glass. But this recent data, it shows us this is very much a two-way street. We aren't just documenting anomalies anymore. We are dealing with a learning predator that has realized it's under a microscope and has consciously decided to totally flip the script and change the rules of the game. To really grasp the gravity of this, we need to completely shift our perspective. So forget the standard campy ghost stories or those chaotic shaky cam videos you might be used to. I want you to look at this through the eyes of a security technician who's just sitting there analyzing hours and hours of totally mundane static footage. Just picture it. You're in this cramped, dark room. You feel the low hum of server towers vibrating through the floor. Your face is lit up by the cold blue glow of a dozen monitors. You're scrubbing through video feeds from a supposedly empty building, and suddenly you spot a terrifying trend. The anomalies aren't just happening. They are actively working around your equipment. This single question, what happens when an entity learns it's being recorded? That is the absolute foundation of this entire behavioral investigation. And we aren't just looking at isolated spooky one-offs here. No way. This investigation is totally grounded in a massive, meticulously verified sample size. We're talking over 200 documented cases spanning an entire decade. When the researchers sat down and categorized all these files, a really distinct wild pattern emerged. Check this out. 35% of these files show naive, direct appearances. Another 45% involve timed glitch corruptions. And perhaps most alarmingly, a growing 20% show tactical blind spot evasion. These are absolutely not random ghost sightings, guys. This breakdown is literally the statistical footprint of an evolving, calculating intelligence. It's rapidly figuring out exactly how our technology works. To make sense of all those numbers, we actually have to map out this chronological journey through the anomaly logs. The research charts a definitive behavioral evolution shift across 3 key eras. It starts back in 2014 with these raw, unfiltered encounters, shifts pretty drastically around 2018 as the entities begin to adapt, and arrives at a highly calculated, honestly almost militaristic state in 2024. We're going to trace this exact timeline to see how these entities went from being completely oblivious to camera lenses to literally turning our own security infrastructure against us. So let's establish our baseline. 2014 to 2017. The researchers classified this initial control group as the naive era. The really crucial point here is just how predictably and openly they acted during these early years. The characteristics of these encounters are super striking. Entities appeared directly in front of cameras, and they interacted with the physical environment right in plain sight. In dozens of haunting logs from this specific era, you'd see a figure walk down a hallway, stop dead right in front of the lens, and just kind of look around. Zero reaction to the camera itself. Honestly, they wandered through the halls like a confused tourist looking for the ice machine. They had absolutely no concept of what a recording device even was, which of course made them incredibly easy for technicians to just document and track. But then, the data takes a sharp, honestly completely inexplicable turn. We enter the transition phase, 2018 to 2021. So during this period, it's not like the hauntings stopped, but the way they were captured, that fundamentally shifted. At first, skeptics and honestly even the technicians themselves just brushed off the missing footage. The old hypothesis was simple. Random camera malfunctions, technicians were actually going in, replacing hard drives, checking power supplies, literally blaming faulty wiring for months. But the new reality, which was backed by analyzing the precise timestamps of the footage, was way, way more disturbing. It was calculated clockwork evasion. The cameras weren't just randomly breaking because of bad wiring, they were being intentionally blinded right before a massive paranormal event took place. And that brings us to a highly, highly specific time frame, 30 seconds. This basically became the signature pattern in the logs during the transition phase. Security footage would show 30 seconds of just a completely empty, silent hallway. Nothing happening. Then, bam, the camera feed would scramble or drop out entirely into static. When the feed finally returned a minute later, the room would be inexplicably damaged. And we're not just talking about, like, a picture frame falling over here. The source material details instances where massive, heavy wooden chairs were stacked perfectly in a corner, reaching all the way to the ceiling. All of that executed within that exact 30-second window of missing data. The speed and the pure intent there is just staggering. The researchers actually coined this the clockwork glitch cycle, and the technical link here is terrifying when you really think about it. Think about how annoying it is when your streaming service or a video call buffers for just a couple of seconds. Now imagine an entity weaponizing that exact technical vulnerability. The entity was somehow triggering, or maybe just waiting for, 1 to 2 minutes of corrupted footage. It was using that exact window of electronic blindness to move completely undetected into the next room. So it wasn't that the cameras were failing to capture the ghosts. It was that the ghosts had figured out how to use the camera's failure rates to their ultimate advantage. Crazy, right? Now, what's really interesting about this next slide is how it brings us to the modern reality, 2024 to 2026. Welcome to the era of tactical evasion. As one of the lead researchers noted in the source material, and I'm quoting here, "This isn't haunting behavior. This is tactical behavior. We are absolutely no longer observing some localized echo of the past, blindly repeating a loop. No, the entity has fully mapped human observation limitations. It knows exactly the arc of a camera's sweep. It knows where it can be seen. And infinitely more unsettling, it knows exactly where it cannot be seen." Let's break down exactly what this looks like in practice by walking through a specific case study from April 2026. If you review the movements like a security analyst breaking down a highly calculated heist, the anatomy of a modern evasion goes exactly like this. Step 1. The entity literally waits for a camera malfunction cycle. Step 2. It actively uses physical objects, like large pieces of furniture, to obscure its approach from active sightlines. And Step 3. It moves flawlessly between camera-free blind spots to navigate the entire house. What's completely wild is that surveillance experts will tell you that even professional cat burglars rarely exhibit this level of flawless spatial awareness regarding blind spots. It is a totally deliberate, meticulously planned route executed with impossible precision. When we actually pull back and compare the data side by side, the contrast is just stark. Look at this. In 2014, the interaction was directly in front of the lens, and the movement style was basically just aimless wandering. Fast forward to 2026, the interaction is completely avoiding sightlines, and the movement is entirely based on strategic blind spot use. The data paints this totally undeniable picture of an intelligence that recognized our methods of observation and then deliberately developed countermeasures. Basically, they learned. Which brings us to the climax of this entire investigation: intelligence beyond the lens. See, the core realization from the source files isn't just that these anomalies exist. The truly terrifying takeaway is the staggering rate of their adaptation. The entity is evolving its behavior significantly faster than our security technology can even track it. I mean, our cameras get sharper, our hard drives get bigger, but their evasion tactics get smarter. They have been paying very, very close attention to us. Ultimately, all of this data forces us to ask a question that really lingers long after the screens go dark. Seriously, think about your own home for a second. Think about the little lenses watching over your living room right now. If this entity has systematically evolved to hide from our cameras, what exactly is it doing while we aren't looking?
Come to me, chickens!